everyone. I am Julianne Meyer. You are watching Own Your Wellness. And before we get started, I have to tell you a really quick, funny story. So I have a few different rituals before we do a show. And one of them, as most of you know, is I use my communication chakra booster. But the other thing that I always do is I love to hold on to this particular crystal. But if you notice, it's clear. So sometimes I'm looking around for it and I can't see it because it's on something white. I'm like, where in the heck is my crystal? I just set it down for a second and it's lost. So anyway, hold tight to your things and treat them kindly. Otherwise, yeah. Anyway, I'm excited about today's guest. We have been trying to have this conversation for a while now, and it's finally happening. So let's bring her on. Her name is Carla Fernandez. She's a transformational life coach, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Julianne. So nice to be here.
I'm so glad that we're finally having this opportunity.
Me too. It was a long time coming. I know we spoke a few months ago and then summer kind of got in the way and we've had a few things come up in our lives. So it's nice that we're finally getting the opportunity to do this.
Exactly. And I appreciate your patience. And because, as you know, I got married during the summer, so that really took a lot of time.
Yeah. Congratulations again.
Thank you so much. But I'm excited to talk with you about you. So why don't you share a little bit about yourself and your journey?
Sure. Yeah. So as you mentioned, my name is Carla. I'm a transformational life coach. And I really got into this business as sort of a result of my own journey. I would say about 7 or 8 years ago, I had a bit of a breakdown in my life. I was dealing with a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety. I had a lot of pressure from work, and the career that I was doing at the time really created a lot of stress and anxiety just in general in my life. And so I was working crazy hours, working like 16, 17-hour days. I was in the finance world, so it's just naturally a more sort of stressful industry or stressful environment. And, at the time I didn't really have self-care practices in place. I find that a lot of these things aren't really taught in school. And depending on sort of, what generation you were born in, the people who sort of modeled, what adulthood looked like, they themselves didn't necessarily have any self-care practices in place. And so it wasn't something that I learned through my upbringing. I was really taught to just work hard. When you work hard, you'll achieve your, goals, objectives, whatever the case may be. And then you'll find happiness and you'll find all these other wonderful things. So I sort of had that type of mentality, growing up and into my early 20s and 30s. And so I poured a lot of my time and energy into my work and failed to sort of neglect myself as an individual. And I mean, we can only do that for so long before our body decides to say, hey, I don't enjoy this. It's time to create a change. And so I would say, it was about 7 years ago. I was sort of forced into a time in my life where I had to slow down. As I said, I was dealing with a lot of stress and anxiety from work and all the other things that were sort of like catching up to me from my childhood and things that I hadn't processed, experiences, emotions, traumas, all these things that, we're not, again, really taught to process or deal with, kind of started to catch up with me. And I really had no choice at this point. I was dealing with so many physical health issues that I had to take some time away from my work and from all of the to-dos on my list. I had to get to a point where I was really just in solitude, really resting, focusing on getting my mindset right, my processing the emotions, processing the trauma, processing my life experiences. And, for, I would say probably 10 years prior to this sort of breakdown, I was already trying to explore different alternatives, different solutions for the physical conditions that were being presented. But I was sort of going about it with traditional allopathic medicine. And for me, unfortunately, that led to, just a repeated cycle of the same symptoms, the same issues without any healing or resolution. And so, all of this sort of culminated to that breaking point where I just wasn't able to handle it anymore. And that stage, I was forced, whether I wanted to or not, I was forced to slow down and forced to take that time for myself and really figure out, how am I going to find the appropriate healing that is, in alignment with the type of individual that I am. And that's really when my world started to open up to alternative healing modalities, energy healing, more naturopathic or homeopathic type of approaches. And I started to find myself again. And so, coming out of that experience for myself, I know that it was very challenging. I felt lost, confused, lonely, unsure of where to turn to, unsure of what to try next. And it dawned on me that I was going through this experience myself, so that I can come out of it, learn from it, and then be able to help and support others along on their journey. And so, once I started to learn all these different mindset practices, other healing modalities, I really understood that the mind, the emotions, the physical body, as well as our our spiritual side, they all come together and work together in order to provide perfect harmony or perfect alignment, or that balance that we all sort of seek in our life. And I found that from my experience, everything is so segmented and isolated. When we're, going to the doctor's really only looking at our physical health. We might have a, therapist or a counselor in our lives, but they're really only looking at the mental or the emotional side of things. And I found that no one's really coming together and bringing all of those components into one and looking at the individual as a whole, complete unit from all of those different sort of aspects or perspectives. And so coming out of this work for me really meant that I wanted to be in a position where I can support individuals when it comes to their mental, emotional, physical, as well as their spiritual well-being.
It's okay.
So I started down the path of learning, getting deeper into some of these modalities so that then I can support others on their journey.
I love that. Now, for those people that are watching and they're saying, well, because transformational coach can mean something different to everyone. So for you, what does that encompass?
So for me, it really means working on, as I said, on all those 4 layers. Mm-hmm. And I do that through a process. It's my simple 3-step process where I help people identify all of the programming, all of the conditioning that we've been exposed to as children through society, the education system, our parents, our loved ones, the people that sort of surrounded us, for the most part with the best of intentions, but there was some programming that has been passed down to us from generation upon generation that really no longer serves us when we become adults. And in fact, that programming, what it does for us is actually limit us from recognizing our own abilities or our own capabilities and feeling confident enough to be able to go out into the world and share those gifts. So many of us know that we have something special to offer and we have something amazing to give to the world, but fundamentally we have a belief system that we're not good enough or worthy enough, or we're not going to be successful at whatever it is that we're trying to accomplish. And so more often than not, we hold ourselves back from being able to achieve those dreams, our biggest dreams or our wildest desires. We often become our own worst critics and we sabotage ourselves and really prevent us from being able to take those steps forward. So my 3-step process helps us to identify in all of those areas, whether it's our mindset, our emotions, our physical well-being, or our spiritual well-being, what are the things that what are the values or the belief systems that we have in place that are no longer helping us or serving us. So we first identify those, and then we go through a process of releasing them. So a lot of the techniques and tools that I've learned over the years have actually been able to support myself and my clients in releasing those traumas and releasing those difficult life experiences that we all have. I mean, the story is different for everyone, and how it shows up and manifests in our lives may be different, but we all have our own stories that, hold us back, or situations that prevent us from moving forward. So we go through that process of releasing those painful experiences, or releasing the emotions that we have attached to those painful experiences. We look at how to reframe those experiences so that we can look at it with a lens of growth and opportunity and lessons learned, so that we can evolve as individuals and become better individuals, and ultimately be able to go out into the world and share our gifts, because I think that is what we are here for as spiritual beings having this physical experience. The second step process is really helping people reconnect back to who they are at their core. And I think, again, from my own experiences and the clients that I've worked with, because there's been so much programming done to us at such a young age, we grow up and we create all these different masks and all these different versions of ourselves, so that when we go out into the world, we're accepted by whatever group, or we're accepted at work or with our family, or whatever the case may be. We're ultimately constantly changing up the masks so that we step out in the world and we feel embraced and accepted by the people around us. But a lot of those times, those masks are not authentic or real to who we are, and they don't necessarily represent our deepest values. So that in itself creates an internal conflict with us individuals, because we have a strong calling to be something, but when we show up in the world, we're something completely different. And so we're not in alignment with who we really are and how we show up in the world. So it becomes very difficult for us to attract and draw in all those wonderful things that we're trying to achieve in our life. So with that second step, we really get clear on who is Carla, or who is Julianne, and what makes Julianne happy. What are the values and the beliefs that you hold dear about yourself and the world, and how can we take that now and go out into the world to show up as our authentic selves. So we move into step number 3, which is really helping individuals come into alignment or realign themselves to that magnificent being that they were meant to be when they decided to come into, this physical experience. But something along the way has sort of deterred them from that path. And the work that I do really helps them recognize what that is and get back on track, so that they are living their life with fulfillment, with purpose, with happiness, with joy, and really in alignment with who they really are, and not who they're pretending to be so that the world can accept them.
I like that. Something that comes to mind, a question that I have that I know people watching will have the same question. Well, actually, you'll understand why I'm asking. So you were talking about programming, and I can't even tell you how many times, myself included, I'm like, I'm not programmed. What are you talking about? I have no idea, blah, blah, blah. And then something will happen where I will see it. And I'll go, whoa, it's just something that I take as truth, versus realizing that I was told that and I believe it long enough that it became my truth and not actual reality. So I'm curious if you could please give an example of programming that you see fairly often, because everybody's different, everybody has different stories, but there's got to be a few things that you've seen more than once.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think the thing that I've come across most in my work is people, and this is, it's not a conscious thing, but people have been programmed to believe that love is conditional, unfortunately. And so with that condition, what happens is the way we internalize it as human beings is that often it can show up in a way that we do not feel good enough to achieve that goal or that desire. Now, the other challenge is that a lot of times people don't even think about it in that way. It's not like people are sitting there saying, oh, I'm not lovable enough for this to happen, or I'm not good enough for this to happen. That may not necessarily be the thoughts that are running through the mind, but that is the underlying feeling that is actually showing up in their life. And how does this often sort of manifest? For example, we may be wanting to make a career change. We may be wanting to maybe climb up that ladder or take that next step, sort of, going upwards in our career. And we'll find a position that maybe we apply for, and we start to look at, the requirements or the qualifications or certain things. And we automatically tell ourselves, oh, I'll never get that position because of XYZ. I don't have this qualification, or maybe I haven't spent enough time doing this. People will start to come up with all of the reasons as to why they will not be able to achieve that new career or that new position. And again, the language it's not necessarily being used as I'm not good enough or worthy enough, but all the excuses as to why they will not get that job is an underlying feeling that individual feels not worthy or not good enough for whatever they're applying for or whatever position they're trying to go after. And we can use this with almost anything. You can look at it from the perspective of a relationship. Someone might be attracted to a particular individual and may choose not to express their feelings or communicate how they feel because they may not feel pretty enough or, accomplished enough, or maybe they don't feel like, their life is in the right place to welcome, a partner into their life. These are all signs that there is something deeper showing up in the person's life. And we need to sort of go beyond the surface of the excuses or the reasons why someone isn't taking those steps forward. And often what I've seen from the work that, with my clients is that a lot of the times that underlying feeling is really a feeling of not feeling worthy enough, not feeling good enough, not feeling loved enough, or not feeling like, there is enough support or love in their life to be able to move forward.
I love that example. And I like that you mentioned too, like we're maybe not even aware, like we don't think of it. We're looking at it through our own eyes. So somebody else, that's where a coach comes in handy. They can see it from a different angle, a different picture, and mirror it back to you. On that note, we do need to go to a commercial break. So we're going to be back in just a minute. And for those of you who are watching us live, thank you so much for being here today. We appreciate you. As I mentioned, it's time for us to go to commercial. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about this idea of clarity. And there's a few things in my life that have stopped me from having clarity, and I'm sure I'm not alone in that. So we'll be back in just a minute.
When drug or alcohol addiction take over, things begin to disappear. Your friends, your family, and eventually, you. Recommended by Dr. Phil, New Method Wellness can help get your life back with individualized treatment plans for dual diagnosis clients. New Method Wellness provides the most highly credentialed treatment in a safe and welcome environment. Call New Method Wellness for your free consultation and ask about our national accreditations. Together, we can put the pieces back together.
Welcome back, everyone. Let's bring Carla back to the show. Welcome back. So glad to have you here, as I said before.
Thank you again.
So, I want to talk about clarity, but you had mentioned before about 3 different step program that you have. And I'd love for you to share a little bit about what that looks like to work with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So my coaching program is a 3-month intensive program. And during that 3-month process, we go through really identifying what those belief systems are, what's sort of in place. We sort of take an assessment of what's going on currently in your life. And then what do we need to do to start getting to that root cause of what is showing up in your life. And then that, as I said, that first step is about releasing. So it's 3 months. The first month, we're essentially identifying and looking at some of the challenges that have come up in your life and what we need to do to get to that root cause so we can release that pain, release that trauma, release those belief systems. As we move into the second phase, technically it would be sort of the second month, we start developing all the practices, kind of like a daily routine that allows us to stay in connection with ourselves, and when I say stay in connection to ourselves, I mean to our higher self or our spiritual side, because I believe that our spiritual side has a blueprint for what our life is, or how our life is meant to be, or how we're meant to unfold this life. And we really need to stay connected to that side of us so we have that guidance and we can take those steps forward with confidence and with that sort of trust in place, knowing that we're going in the right direction. So that second month is about really implementing all of the practices and daily routines that someone will need to be able to keep that communication channel open with their higher self, so that they feel like they're getting the guidance, and they get the guidance that they need to keep moving forward. As we move into step 3, we've sort of, again, the first month, we've cleared away all the clutter. We've cleared away all the clouds that have been sort of keeping us, stuck in that life. We move into the phase 2, the second month. We start to kind of see and get clarity on who we really are and what we're really here to do. We move into the third month. Now we have a better idea of what our goals or our desires or our dreams are. Now it's about implementing and putting the action steps into place so that we can bring to life whatever it is we're manifesting. So for someone who's maybe looking at, weight loss goal, then we start to put in all of the practices, the daily routines, the healthy eating, all of those, the actual action steps that need to be taken. We figure out what those are, and then the individual naturally will go out, start to, take those steps to make progress towards their goal. And they will have someone along the way that's going to keep them accountable, that is to an extent going to hold their hand through that process and be there for them as they encounter new roadblocks or new challenges in life. Because unfortunately, that's just the reality. Even though we go through a process of healing and we may, come out of it with a different perspective, at the end of the day, the work that I do with my clients is to remind them that we are humans. We're going to continue to face adversity and challenges as we keep going through life. My objective, though, is to be able to teach them and provide them with the tools so that they can better navigate that adversity, better navigate those challenges, and be able to keep moving forward and pushing forward towards their goals, and not allow that adversity or challenges to hold them back and keep them stuck and keep them in those emotions. So again, that third phase is really about being there, being the cheerleader, holding my clients' hands, and being that support system so that as they continue to face that adversity or those challenges in achieving their goals, they have someone that they can come back to and say, this is what I've encountered. How do I navigate this? Or these are the challenges I'm being confronted with now. Like, what can you offer me in terms of guidance or support to help me overcome it? So that's the 3-month program. We work very intensively, primarily in a one-on-one setting. And then after that, I typically invite my clients to stay on with me just for regular, I call it my regular maintenance program, where, clients continue to work with me on a one-on-one or on a monthly basis ongoing. And for that, they can join a variety of different activities that are happening throughout the month. There's, group coaching calls. There are practices that I teach my students on how to manage stress. So it's something called TRE. It's tension trauma release exercise. So it's a somatic body-based practice that helps us process stress and anxiety and trauma, and help to release it from the physical body. Because again, a lot of the work that I've come across over the years has shown me that the connection between our mental, our emotional, and our physical health is a deep connection. So if we're experiencing a lot of stress or anxiety, it will manifest and show up in physical conditions in the body. So a lot of the tools I teach will help people process that stress so that we can avoid, long-term health issues, or avoid, those chronic or even life-threatening type of diseases. So through the regular monthly maintenance, we have TRE classes that you can jump into, similar to like a yoga class. You want to participate in a yoga class for, that week. You'll have a class that you can join, emotional freedom techniques. So there are a variety of different things that will happen throughout the month that is designed, again, to keep my clients moving along their progress so that they can achieve their goals. And If at any point they need support, they have a community, including myself, of course, the coach, to be able to support them along the way. I think that was one of the biggest challenges for me after I learned all of these beautiful things that I know can help and support me on my journey. I think the challenge for me was also to stay consistent. And, as new things sort of came up in my life, there wasn't anyone that I can sort of bounce those ideas off of or approach for, advice or guidance. And so when I chose to create my program, I wanted to make sure that it was completely holistic, that it would be sort of a one-stop shop for individuals who are looking at making changes in their life, that they can come to this community and they will have myself, my team, and others, individuals who are experiencing similar things, to be part of their support system to help them continue to move along.
Awesome. So my question is, what is your personal favorite way to handle the upcoming stresses in your life?
I would say it's TRE. I know that, or at least from my experience, I find that often the case, it's often the case when people are talking about their experiences over and over and over again. And, we all do this. You speak to a friend, someone asks you how your day is, or someone asks you what's going on in your life. We end up telling them, naturally, if we're comfortable and depending on the nature of the relationship. But as we keep talking about the story or the experience, what we don't realize is that we're actually reliving the experience as we're talking about it. We're creating an emotional state in our physical being that is, in essence, reliving that stress or that trauma or that anxiety, that anxious situation. And that is just causing more disservice, I think, to the body. So for me, my go-to practice is TRE. As I said, it's called tension trauma release exercise. So it's a physical body movement. We're using actual exercise, very similar to a yoga practice. And we're in essence triggering a mechanism that we have innately within us that helps us to actually shake off or shed off all of the stress, all of the tension, all of the trauma that we may experience through life. And the reason why I love this practice so much is it's innate, it's within us. And what I love about the body is that it has that blueprint. It knows exactly what it needs to do in order to provide optimal health. We just need to provide it with the right environment and the right practices and tools in order to support the body in that healing journey. And I'm a believer in, God, the creator, source, however people like to identify or resonate with that term. And I truly believe that we have been equipped with absolutely everything we need to be able to navigate this experience. It's just, unfortunately, again, these are practices or tools that are not taught to us in school. But I do believe that, if it's innately within us, then it is in our right to be able to use it so that we can have the healing and the support we need. So that TRE practice allows us to literally shake off the trauma from our nervous system so that it doesn't attach itself to different organs or different parts of our body and then eventually lead to those more chronic or long-term sort of diseases that we all want to avoid.
Exactly. Now, something that I've come across in my work is this idea of trauma comparing. And,
Yes.
especially the worse somebody's trauma is, that 99.999% of the time they'll say, oh, it's not as bad as so-and-so's. It's not as bad as this. And, it's not about comparing traumas. But here's the question that I think that you could answer that would be really helpful to the people who are watching is, if you don't compare traumas, what makes something a trauma?
It's ultimately, it's the imprint that it causes on the physical body, and how someone sort of perceives that life experience. I have this debate all the time with people, especially when they come from like a larger family where they may have siblings or other people that have been part of their sort of journey from a child. And, naturally, when I have two siblings, we all grew up in the same home. We all grew up with the same experience in essence. However, we each walked away with a different perspective of it and a different imprint of what that experience was. And someone like myself probably had more trauma in comparison to my brother and sister, but it's more because of how I see it rather than the experience itself. We're all unique. We're all so different. I'm also a believer that we've had past lives and past life experiences that we carry in our DNA, we carry in our blueprint. And that in itself can mean that, based on those past experiences, I might have a different perspective of how I see things, say, in comparison to my siblings. So even though we had the same experience, we look at the experience very differently because we're all unique and we're all very different. And how that experience was actually imprinted in our conscious mind is what will determine whether someone is holding on to trauma or not. Something so simple as telling someone that maybe they're a little bit overweight. For one individual, that may not be a big issue. They may just be like, yeah, I am overweight, and they can move on with their life. But for someone else, maybe they came from a home where all they heard was a conversation about their weight, or all they heard was that they were overweight, or all they heard was that they needed to go on a diet. That in itself can be traumatic or can be triggering for that person. So as you said, it's really not about comparing trauma. It's just we, as a society, we have to come to a point and a place that we accept that trauma is a thing and it has been part of everyone's upbringing. It could be something very small, like that example of, being maybe overweight. Could be something small. And I'm not trying to diminish or downplay anybody's trauma. I'm just trying to give people a bit of a range to say it could be something like, a comment that someone made to me, or it could be something much more profound or life-changing, like, going through a divorce or losing a crucial family member or whatever the case may be. Anything in that spectrum can create an imprint of trauma on an individual. And it's not for me or anyone outside of the experience to say, yeah, that should have been traumatic, or no, that wasn't something that should be traumatic, right? Each individual will have or will navigate that experience with all of their past lives, with all of their, belief systems that they've been holding on to. And simply that can create that trauma imprint.
Yeah, I remember my mom passed away when I was 14, so that was traumatic. And I remember going to church camp, and this kid, and it was maybe a year out from my mom passing away, it hadn't been that long. And he was up front, and he was so upset and wounded, and it had something to do with his popularity. To me, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. But something in me in that moment realized that was really, really hard for him. And I remember thinking, man, almost jealous. Like, I wish that was my problem. I wish that was my trauma. But yeah, even at that young age, I was able to recognize that for him, that was the worst thing that was happening in his life. He had nothing else to compare it to. So, I just remember feeling bad for him, and hoping that he would get some thicker skin. Anyway, on that note, we do need to go to a commercial break. So we're going to be back in just a minute. And I said hello to everybody who's watching us live. Now it's time to say hello to everybody who's watching us on demand. We will be back after these messages. And when we return, we're going to continue this conversation and sort of talk a little bit more about things that you can do to start improving the way that you're living your life right now while you're doing this work. We'll be back in just a minute.
Welcome to E360 TV, the live streaming and on-demand destination for influential voices and enlightened audiences. We offer trending, grassroots, and purpose-driven content across a diverse range of interests. E360 TV is more than just watching programs. We offer the ability to interact with live shows connecting audiences to real, authentic influencers and storytellers while streaming to millions of devices. Real experiences. Raw conversation. One destination for it all. E360 TV.
When drug or alcohol addiction take over, things begin to disappear. Your friends, your family, and eventually, you. Recommended by Dr. Phil, New Method Wellness can help get your life back with individualized treatment plans for dual diagnosis clients. New Method Wellness provides the most highly credentialed treatment in a safe and welcome environment. Call New Method Wellness for your free consultation and ask about our national accreditations. Together, we can put the pieces back together.
Man, technical difficulties today. Anyway, let's bring our guest Carla back to the show. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, in a society where we are more human doing versus human being, I know that there's a lot of people out there who are like, 3 months? What do you mean 3 months? Like, they can't fathom taking that long before, really starting to make any changes. Well, that's not true, but you understand what I'm getting at. And I'm curious, what kind of things can people do to maybe improve the quality of their life or the relationship with themselves while they're working through this process?
I would say find a practice that resonates with you as an individual, that invites and brings more stillness into your life. Because as you mentioned just a moment ago, we are all living in that human being type of mentality or human doing mentality where we're just constantly, trying to check off that next thing off our list. And just especially in larger cities, I find, and I mean, I live in a pretty large city here in Canada. I live in Toronto. So it's very common to see sort of my society that's very much like a hustle and bustle type of society where everyone's always go, go, go. There's always something on the calendar. There's always a next appointment that we're racing off to. There's always something else that we're trying to do. And being in that state all the time, I know for me is what eventually led me to having my breakdown. I was constantly doing, and not really taking any time to truly recharge my battery. And so I would highly encourage people to find that practice, whether it's meditation or doing some breath work, or, signing up for a yoga practice, like having a regular yoga practice, can also help people bring that stillness and start to really open up that communication between the human being and the spiritual being, or that higher self. So inviting more of that stillness, I think, will start to bring a little bit more clarity to the individual's sort of mind. And I also feel that when we're in stillness, that's often when we get our downloads, what I call downloads, or, sort of messages from the divine, God, the creator, source, our higher self. We get that communication of maybe the answers to the questions that we have. And when we're too busy doing, we have too much going on in our mind, too much clutter going on. Our thoughts are sort of racing and all over the place, that we're not in a position or in a place where we can actually openly receive those downloads and that guidance. So I would say definitely find a practice that invites a little bit of stillness into your life. And I would say practice it on a daily basis. And I know a lot of people will start off by saying, I don't have time for that. It simply can start off with just being 5 minutes a day. And once you start to see the benefits of those 5 minutes, then I think naturally people feel more comfortable to start increasing the time, to say, okay, now I'm going to give myself 10 minutes, or I'm going to give myself half an hour. Ideally, we want to get to a point or have a regular practice in place that we're carving out at least 1 hour a day for ourselves to just be, not to do, not to, check off another thing off of your list, but to just sit in that stillness, sit in that silence, whether it's journaling or going to a yoga practice or doing a meditation, something that's going to invite that sort of peace of mind and tranquility into the body, the mind, the soul, and our emotions. Once we build that over time, I believe that people will start to see the results that they need. I mean, that's just one piece of the puzzle, right? But I think just doing that, they'll start to see some results in their life.
No, absolutely. And there's something that I really want to point out that you said that I think is really important. A lot of us, well, it's the word practice. And a lot of us will do something until we feel better and then stop doing that thing that made us feel better, because they're like, oh, I'm healed, or oh, I'm fine, or all of a sudden you don't have time anymore. You find yourself right back where you were in the beginning. So do you find that that's normal behavior for people or something?
I do find that a lot of people get trapped in that cycle where, as you said, they'll start a practice, they start to see the benefits and start to feel better, and then they sort of fall off the wagon of continuing with that practice. But I think what is important here to recognize is that the continuation of that practice is what is going to continue to support that individual in feeling well and staying well. So to go back to my coaching program, that is why I have the ongoing, after the 3 months of, really diving deep and getting to the root of things. After that process, I'm inviting my clients to stay on and continue doing work with me, because I've seen how easy it is to fall off track and to fall off of doing those practices. So my intention with the ongoing program is that you will have a place in a community that is going to keep you accountable to doing those practices, that it's going to keep you accountable to your, morning routine, if that's what you choose to implement for your life, or, whether it is going to that class, that you have that accountability partner that's going to say, hey, did you do your yoga class today? Or did you get up to do your meditation? Or are you practicing your TRE? Or are you practicing whatever modality? And if not, if they're not, then again, having that individual to, be there to say, well, why not? And what can we do right now so we can get you back on track?
Mm-hmm. I like that. We're just about out of time. We have 2 minutes left. So I'm curious if there's any final thoughts that you'd love to share with the audience.
Yes, absolutely. I have a workbook, a guidebook that I share with, everyone. I'm trying to get this out to as many people as I possibly can, where it's essentially helping people start to identify what some of those belief systems that they have in place in their own life that's creating these roadblocks, or in essence, having them self-sabotage and preventing them from achieving their goals. So I would love to share that with your community as well. I think it's, my philosophy is that we may have an idea of where we want to go and the plans that we want to achieve or the goals that we want to achieve, but we can't get there unless we know where we are. Mm-hmm. It's the same idea of, when we get into a car and we're driving somewhere we've never been before, we typically will put in the address into our GPS, whether it's our phone or our car GPS, and it will map out the route for us to get to that destination. But the most crucial part is the GPS has to know and has to pick up where you are currently in order to be able to map out that path. And so it's the same idea with the work that I do, is that we have to get to that root cause of those belief systems, because until we do, it's going to be very difficult for us to get to that end result or to get to that end goal that we're trying to achieve. So I've developed a workbook, a little bit of a guidebook for people to start to analyze and see what is showing up for them, so that they know where they are. They know what point on the map they are, so that they know what they need to do in order to move to that goal or those dreams. So that guidebook is going to be very beneficial for individuals to start working through, so that they can see for themselves how these belief systems show up in their own life, and ultimately how it's blocking them from taking those steps forward.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Carla. I really appreciate you being here today. It's been an absolute pleasure hearing you speak and share your story with us. So thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. It's been a pleasure being on your show.
And everyone, that is all the time that we have right now. Thank you for joining us. We will be back again soon. Enjoy the rest of your week.